In an interview with Zane Lowe with Apple Music, Pink talked about wanting to make the most out of your one life that you have on this earth. And I think it is most reflected in the latest album she just put out, TRUSTFALL. It's her ninth studio album, I believe. And what's interesting about this one is that she had a couple years off in between album releases. Like the last one she put out was 2019 with How to Be Human. So she had some time to really curate and edit and kind of hone a sound for this album in a way that's cohesive and unlike anything we've heard before. So there's a lot to break down about it, but here to break down Trust Fall by Pink with me is my friend Andrew. Andrew, how are you?
I'm good, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on. You've been a Pink fan for a while, right? Like since the beginning?
Yep. Yeah, since late 90s she came out. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like wild to think that she started off like her first album ever was like R&B and like that TLC like Britney almost vein, and now she's progressed into like one of the most iconic like pop rock kind of artists of all time, and she just continues to kind of reinvent herself in a way, but we still always get these characteristics of Pink, I feel, on every album that she does, and Trust Fall is like no exception to that. um and she talked about too a lot in this interview that I watched how like the concept of trust applies to so many areas in our lives today. Like, you have trust with going to school or to work or dropping your kids off at school, like she mentioned specifically, because she has two kids, or even just with like friendships and things like that. So I think like the grander theme of the album is just kind of like taking that leap and just feeling like full confidence in your relationships or whatever you have going on.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if you had a chance to see it yet, but in the music video for Trust Fall, she takes a moment and she kind of speaks a little bit about that, about just kind of like letting go and kind of having that trust fall, if you will. So I thought, yeah, that what you just said kind of really connects with what she's been saying too. So
And like the aspect of like Trust Fall is like all about diving in. And I think she does that perfectly like with this album, because the first song on the album, um, When I Get There, is just so deep and so personal. Like it's pretty much like talking to somebody who's moved on to the afterlife, and she's kind of asking, is there a bar up there? Are you talking to your friends about the weather? Like essentially, what is it like? But I'll find out when I get there. And just to start with something so deep and so profound is kind of a big dick move, or not big dick, I should say, like a big power move. Like she has big dick energy, is what I'm saying.
yeah, no, I agree. I 100% agree. I think starting off with something that has such deep meaning to her, because I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's about her dad, right?
I think so, yeah.
So I think starting off with that was a really good choice because it's something very personal to her, and it kind of is a really good introduction to the album too,
Hmm.
because I feel like there's a lot of ballads, but also there's a lot of ups and downs throughout this album in regards to the vibe of it. So I think that, kind of starting it off slow and then picking up is a really good, she did a good job.
Yeah, and there is kind of like that energy, but I feel like overall, would you agree the album is kind of like on the softer side, right?
Yeah, I would say like I think one of my favorite songs is Long Way to Go,
Hmm.
with the Lumineers. And yeah, I think that in itself is very soft. There's a lot of soft ones. I think there's only a couple, maybe three or four that are like more um upbeat or rock, if you will. I think the rest are
Hmm.
more acoustic.
Yeah. What do you like about Long Way to Go? I'm curious.
I don't know. I think I like the way that they harmonized with each other, Lumineers and Pink. I just think that they did a really good job singing it overall. Um, but I think just the meaning too, like to me, like I don't know, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm like looking at my notes about that one song, and I wrote, she always has songs I feel that relate to being on a journey of some kind. And obviously, that one's literally like alluding to it in the title. And even as we're talking about how the album kind of builds and the energy kind of ebbs and flows, like that song too, like it starts off kind of slow or like softer, I think, with just like piano, and then more instruments come in as like Pink comes in. And yeah, that harmonization with the Lumineers is really interesting. Like her collabs too on the album, like she collabs with people that definitely are in more of that realm, I guess you could say, like more of like the indie realm. Like she has another collab with First Aid Kit. She has another one with Chris Stapleton at the end, who Chris Stapleton's just like amazing. Like you can't replicate his voice however hard you try. But it's really interesting. Like she's kind of also diving into these other genres that she's kind of, dipped her toes into. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, I think she doesn't really fit into one specific genre, even though I think there are those songs that really do stick out to you. Like, I think even from the past, looking at like So What or
Hmm.
Sober or Please Don't Leave Me, I think even in that era and those albums, there's still other songs and other vibes. Even more recently, looking at like Beautiful Trauma, if you look at like Revenge versus Beautiful Trauma, like there are different vibes in it. And I think that she just does a really good job at not being defined to one specific genre, even on an album. Like she's very comfortable with moving it around too.
Yeah, exactly. And I love to like, Last Call, for example, you just reminded me of because she has kind of done a few country hits as well. And Last Call has like that country twang to it, mostly with the guitar in the background. And
Yeah.
I just like love that song too. Like I literally wrote it kind of reminds me or gives a similar vibe as like Raise Your Glass because it's talking about like having your last hurrah before like the world ends. She has like another little line in there. It just stops and she goes like, bartender." Like it's just
Yeah.
very she and that's the other thing too, like on this album. Like you still get the quirkiness of Pink, like all those personalities, like, the fun loving, the not giving a shit. Like, like I think Last Call is a good example of how we can sum up like everything she's done in the past still coming into fruition with like this album.
Yeah, actually, I think Last Call is another one that I really, really liked on this album too. And I'm really glad that you also would say it's a little country. I mean, I wouldn't say it's, classified really as country, but I definitely do sense a little bit of country vibes in there. Um, Overall though, yeah, I really liked that song too. I don't know. Yeah, I think what you said, you summed it up really nicely. Just like last call before the world ends, like, last hurrah. That's really, yeah. And it does relate to Raise Your Glass, I think, too.
There was another song too that really made me think of another one of hers. I think it was I'm like looking through it through my very detailed notes. Um, What About Us, which was obviously a big song off of Beautiful Trauma, kind of reminded me a little bit of Trustfall, like the lead single. Like, what did you think about that song?
Of the lead single, or what about us?
Like I wrote down that the concept kind of reminds me of each other. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but I don't know. I was listening to Trust Fall, like the single, and something about it kind of made me go, it kind of sounds like What About Us, or it gives me a similar like feeling when I listen to it.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I feel like when I first listened to it, like I kind of got like not butterflies in my stomach, but I feel like that's the sensation she wanted someone to feel. Like, you're looking over a cliff like Trust Fall. Cause like when it first starts, it's very like, her vocals are very passive, kind of more in the background, and then the bass or the song really just hits and it comes in. And I think it just kind of did like a really good job at that. Overall, I think that the Trust Fall single, she did a good job at naming the title of the album after this, because I think that this is probably one of the more prominent songs from the album
Mm,
itself.
yeah.
Um, but overall, I really liked it. I loved the visual that she did. She actually, there was a behind the scenes, I'm not sure if you saw it, from the Trust Fall music video, and she's like flying over a cliff and like off the edge of a cliff by just herself and extension wires. Like it's crazy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that's like a roller coaster in itself to see. But yeah, I think overall that's probably, like I said, one of the most prominent ones from her album.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more like well-rounded ones. Did you also know that apparently she was afraid of heights and the reason she does all of that trapeze stuff is because she wanted to get over her fear of heights?
I didn't know she was afraid of heights, and if you told me, I don't know if I believe it, because have you seen her shows?
No, but like she's on
That's
my bucket list. Like I want to see her live.
I think her tickets went live February 24th today. Yeah, I think her tickets went live. So
Hmm.
um yeah, they're I think through her website they're being sold through for Boston location. They're being sold through the Red Sox stadium, the Fenway Stadium.
Yeah, she's coming to
So
Fenway. Yeah. But I mean, like, I think she said that in the interview I watched too. I had like literally the same reaction as you. I was like, there's no way. Like, she makes it look so natural. And I think now she's just used to it. But it's just like so
Yeah.
funny, like thinking holistically too about the aspect of trust falling and the concept of the album. It's like you could literally make the argument it's all just about getting over your fears.
Yeah. I think just in general, like her flying over everyone, like, I mean, you have to think about that too. There's probably not like a bad seat at her concert. Like,
Mm,
you think of artists and you think like, um, sorry, you think of artists and you think like, what are you gonna, where are you gonna sit? Where are you gonna move? But I think yeah, I mean, if she's flying over everywhere, you can pretty much see her.
yeah, like you won't miss her essentially. Something else too, like I want to talk about with this album, like, going off of how she touches on different genres, like we alluded to it a little bit with Trustfall, which is a little bit more of like a techno song, you could say, and like very
Mhm.
soft, like clubby vibes it gives. Other songs like that kind of echo that, I would say, are like Runaway. Um, Hate Me Too is a little bit more energetic. And if anything, Hate Me is the one that I said kind of takes us back to like 2000, like early
Mm.
2000s Pink, with like that attitude of being like, I don't care who you are, but like it was literally like she's talking about you made me this way. So like, I hope you enjoy it. And I wrote in my notes too, like it literally reminds me of Funhouse Part Two, like that kind of vibe.
Yes, yes, I 100% agree. For Runaway in itself, I kind of feel like it's more 80s synth vibes from
Mm,
it. I feel like that and Never Gonna Not Dance Again.
hmm.
I think those two are very, I don't know if it's just a visual from Never Gonna Not Dance Again that makes me think very 80s, but just in general, I think that those are very like 80s pop. But I think Hate Me is a really good callback to, like you said, Funhouse. It's like Funhouse Part Two.
Hmm.
Or even, yeah, I think pretty much, yeah. That's a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, you just reminded me of somewhat of a hot take. I feel, and I don't know how people would agree or feel about what I'm about to say, but I don't think that Never Not Gonna Dance Again is the best single or like the best song on the album.
Um, I I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I do think for this album and kind of to encapsulate what the vibe of this album is, I think it's okay, but I
Mm,
think maybe releasing the Lumineers song or because she said when I get there was a third single and she released it, I think a week or not even a week before her album
mm,
actually came out.
right.
But I don't know, like I that's hard. That's a really hard call.
Well, I mean, like I understand like why it was released as the lead single. It's a little bit more radio friendly, like it's
Mm.
more fun, it's quirky. It has like this adult childhood innocence to it where it's like, she says in interviews like the song makes me want to just take off all my clothes and dance, like just like letting go and not giving a shit. But like when I listen to the whole album, like as I've mentioned, there are so many other songs that I feel like were done so much better or sound more cohesive or have a lot stronger of a message lyrically. That is, like I said, Last Call I thought was really good. Runaway, like I could hear like Trust Fall more on the radio. Like that one's the second single, so that might get some more traction.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I just felt like she kind of made this album, I could tell, not aiming or like engineering it for top 40. Like she made it for herself and it reflects like the music she wanted to put out like the past couple of years. So I think there are just other options on the album that are a lot more exemplary of that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good one that I think other than Last Call that would make a really good single. But that's a really tough call. I'm gonna try and see if I can look up the album itself so
Yeah,
I can
like,
look at it.
and I mean, like, there are a lot of piano ballads and acoustic songs on here too. Like, the last three, Feel Something, Our Song, and Just Say I'm Sorry with Chris Stapleton, like, those are all very heavy and slow. So, like, you can't really market those as like singles, at least in my opinion. But like I said, there are just so many songs that are so much like they're so deep essentially. Like we get a lot of depth from her on this album.
I think Turbulence is also really that would have been a pretty friendly single, I
Oh
think,
yeah.
because that is a very good segue. Because I think Turbulence is like the perfect in between of the, height of the album with the high energy, like Trust Fall or Hate Me. And then it also kind of fits more with the lower toned,
Mm,
like slower ballads. So I think that even Turbulence would have been really good. But I think Never Gonna Not Dance Again is probably just the one that really spoke to her. Like you said in the interview, she did
mhm.
make it for her. So
Yeah.
it does make sense.
I'm so glad you brought up Turbulence because that one may arguably be my favorite
Hmm.
solely off the line that she says, um, the pain is like temporary, but I'll be permanent. Actually, I think it's panic is temporary, but I'll be permanent. Just
Hmm.
something about that line. I kid you not. I listened to this album at like 10 o'clock at night with like all the lights off, and I just sat in my living room and like took notes. And I think it was honestly the best thing I could have done to really soak everything up. But like something about that line and the presentation of that song too, like you're saying, like it was a good in between. It wasn't too fast, too slow, like it wasn't too heavy, too light. Like it just really like grabbed me. And I think she said, I might be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but I think she said she played it for a friend who like lost someone in their life and the friend like literally was blown away by it. Like it's a really strong song, but it also is very easy on the ears.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to check that out actually after, but um, I could definitely see that being the case because I think that's a good way of saying it, that the song itself is really strong and has a very soft way of presenting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said, like we get like all these different like themes of Pink from being like, like I said, on a journey, talking about the meaning of life, dealing with pain and suffering, things like that, which is something she also apparently has dealt with a lot, which kind of shows. Um, but like I said, I think it always comes back to just how she just wants to make the most out of her music. Like she talks a lot about too in the interview with Zayn, like like she's just the happiest when she's singing like with a guitar or like performing live or just like she said something too that I just remembered like when she performs she wants to feel like she's sitting with the person all the way in the back of the room like
Mm-hmm.
making them feel seen. And I think this album like she says it's one of her best and I could probably argue it's also one of her best because I think it really does like touch you on such a deeper like soul level and just makes you feel seen in some way even if it's not the most like radio friendly like I said, but just like personally wise, I think everyone could find something they relate to on this album.
Definitely. And another thing, I don't know if you've thought about this much, but her album artwork in
Hmm.
itself, I think it does a really good job at showing her softer side as well as her tougher side because she's wearing like a pink silk, you know, dress
Yeah.
that's flowing, but she's also wearing like these combat boots in the like on rocks, like in the mountains, it looks like.
Hmm.
So I think that, she's kind of like, you know, I think it does a good job at showing her tough side, like this album shows her tough side, but it also shows her softer side.
Hmm. Yeah. No, that's really good. I didn't think of that. So that's a good point you bring up. Yeah. The cover too was like, and I like have been looking at her Instagram and all the pictures she's been posting in promotion of it and like some photo shoots she's done. And that's kind of where she's at in her career. Like she's is showing more of her soft side, which is very different from what she kind of came up on. But she also will not let people forget she's still a tough cookie and she still is very opinionated and will share those opinions. It doesn't care what you think. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And I think she in general has evolved a lot. And even though the message is still very much, I think, the same,
mhm,
she's I think you don't want an artist that just stays the same. I think you want someone who's continuously evolving, changing. Not, even topics can kind of mature and change. So I think that she did a really good job with her career in general, like the span of it, how she's evolved from basically, don't let was it
don't let me get me.
Don't
Yeah.
let me get me. And she's basically saying, oh, I'm a teenager and no one understands me. And, you know, that's basically the gist of the song. But now it's kind of like, how she's overcoming these different problems that are arising in her life. And
Hmm.
I think it's really interesting how she's changed so much. And I also wonder if that artwork was planned to kind of show the soft and the tough side, if that was like how it was
Mm.
planned, or if that's just like who she is, that she just wanted that, because I could also see that being the case.
Yeah. It definitely, maybe it was just like an unintentional thing. Maybe she saw the idea for the photo shoot and then she saw that photo and was like, that shows both ends of who I am. So let's go with that one. I could see that happening. Like I could see her like going about it that way.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, Angie, thank you so much for coming on and talking about Trust Fall by Pink. Like this has been a great conversation and it just made me realize, you know, how much more people should probably listen to this album because I'm a huge fan of Pink. I think she's great and I think everything she does is great. So if you haven't listened to Trust Fall, you probably should so you can get an earful of what Andrew and I have been saying. So thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.
yeah. David, thanks for having me. Quick question before we log off. What is your favorite across all her whole, what is it, four decade span career? What is your favorite song that you think she's done?
Like a song that she's put out ever.
Yeah, like what's one song that you go back to?
Oh, that's so hard. I will say for me, at least album is probably Funhouse because I think there's just so many great songs on there. Um, but I could argue, and this is the first one that came to my head, that I think her best song is arguably Glitter in the Air.
Okay. Yeah.
What about you?
Um, I would agree that Funhouse is probably my top album by her. I think um my favorite single, this is gonna sound so stupid. Revenge featuring Eminem. I don't know why, but I think that them singing together is just, I don't know, it just sounds really good. I also really love So What, of course. That's like,
Mm, can't go
but
wrong.
and the visual for that one was also really cool. So.
Yeah, I remember being in like sixth or seventh grade when that song came out, and just it was honestly, I think it was honestly the first song I listened to that I openly swear out loud, and I was like, "This is it. This is the moment my whole life changes." Like,
Yeah.
so thanks, Pink, for turning me into a teenage dirtbag. I guess.
Yeah. You have to. Yeah.
So great. All right, well, Andrew, thank you again so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.